From CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede, and today we are looking at what may be the most expensive and contentious state Senate race in Florida this year. The race to see who will represent District 36, which runs from Miami Beach through downtown Miami and Coral Gables and ends out in Sweetwater. The race features Republican State Senator Ileana Garcia, who has fought with black legislators after saying blacks should just move on from the racism of the past, claimed that being gay was a temporary thing, and said she would support an outright ban on all abortions. She has also voted for all of the culture war measures advanced by Governor Ron DeSantis. Her opponent is Democratic State Representative Michael Grieco, a former Miami Beach City Commissioner who was forced to resign amid a campaign finance scandal and has served the past 4 years in the Florida House. Politically, Garcia and Grieco are polar opposites, but as you will see in this interview, he has his own problems as well.
So Jim, thanks for having me on, first of all. And for me, I've been in office or in politics now for almost a decade. And that's not something that defines me, but it is definitely in my DNA. First and foremost, I am a proud father. I'm a former prosecutor. I'm an attorney, but I'm also a public servant and have been doing so for a long time. Been living in Miami Beach for close to 25 years now. South Florida, the same. Went to University of Miami for law school. Go Canes! And I wake up every morning, and whether it's my clients, whether it's my family, or whether it's my constituents, I really do believe in giving and serving, and it's been a passion of mine, both when I was a local commissioner, being in the state house, and now potentially being in the state Senate.
All right, and I want to talk about the issues that I think are important for folks in your Senate district. But before I do that, let's try to clear up a few things, because there are some issues in your past which I think are troubling and may trouble a number of voters. Let's talk about your time on the Miami Beach City Commission and the fact that you were forced to resign as a result of a campaign finance violation. So my question to you is do you take responsibility for what happened? Again, this was a situation where you denied creating a political action committee that raised $200,000, $25,000 of which came from a foreign individual, a Norwegian businessman, and you continually denied that you had anything to do with that PAC, creating that PAC, were raising funding for that PAC, and yet it turned out that you did, and you were forced to resign as a result. Do you regret the way you handled that?
Joe, I don't know about, I have a lot of regrets. And I'm actually glad that you asked the question. That may surprise you and a number of people, because this was 5 years ago. It's something that was very difficult obviously for me and my family. But the reality is this: when you're a candidate or when you're an elected official, the buck stops with you. It has nothing to do, whether it's your staff, whether it's your donors, whether it's anybody that's involved. At the end of the day, the candidate is responsible. And I did take responsibility for it. I still do. It was tough. It was tough. And it's something that, luckily for me, I was beaten, I was bruised. I was not broken though. I came back and, I went back to the voters 6 months later and decided to run for the state house. And luckily my constituents, and my supporters stuck with me. And since then, I think I've not only proven them right, but I've proven a lot of my detractors wrong over the last 4 years in my service in the state house.
Well, let me just stop you there, because the way you said that before, as the candidate, ultimately the buck stops with me. I'm responsible. I hear that, but I also hear in a sense in what you're saying, like, this was the work of somebody else in some ways, but that ultimately I'm responsible since I'm the candidate. Let's be real clear about it. Did you set up that PAC? Did you help set up that PAC to benefit you in your races on Miami Beach? Yes or no?
So listen, Jim, the answer is yes and no, to the effect that the person who set it up needed my help setting it up. I never benefited from it. It actually never spent any money. I think we were hoping that it would support me. I had no control over it, but
essentially you raised all the money for it. You went out and solicited all the money for it. That came out through the myriad investigations. It was you asking people to donate to this PAC. It strains credulity to think that that PAC was then not going to turn around and benefit you in any race that you may have had in the future, including at the time, I think you were eyeing the potential of running for Miami Beach mayor. Let's try to clear the air, because, you know, when the Miami Herald, who exposed this, you say they never ended up doing anything, in part because this PAC was exposed by the good work at the Miami Herald. When the Herald confronted you, you said, and this is a very serious quote to me, "It's absolutely untrue. You can look right into my soul." Today, you're asking voters to trust you. You said back then, "Look into my soul. You can trust me that I had nothing to do with this." And that was wrong then. Why should anybody believe you now?
Well, I don't think that was the actual quote, Jim, but the reality is this. I've never denied my relationship with the chairman of that political committee. I never benefited from it, and I probably would have had things gone through, but I was raising money for multiple political committees at the time. I had one on my own, which I still have, which I still raise money for. And listen, the whole thing was unfortunate. And, you know, there was actually no finding of any guilt. There was no admission of guilt. In fact, the Miami-Dade Ethics Commission dismissed any claim of campaign finance violations down the road. But at the time,
they did find that you did lie with that quote and others to the Miami Herald. So they did find that you lied.
Now, I appreciate that, Jim, but at the same time, you know, they didn't bring any witnesses in, and it's a very low standard. And again, I've taken responsibility for not only things that I did, whether it was oversight or, more importantly, the actions of others. And like I said, I'm responsible for everyone involved in my campaign, whether it be my supporters, my donors, my volunteers, my staff, always have been, always will be. And I think that applies across the board, whether it be people putting up ghost candidates, whether it be folks from political parties. You need to take responsibility for everything that you step up and do if you want to engage in the public.
But my point is, this was a mess of your own making. This wasn't, you know, work of others. This was a mess that you created, and therefore then had to bear responsibility for by resigning from the Miami Beach City Commission. You pled no contest to a misdemeanor, and then you were found to have lied by the Ethics Commission. And I know that there's a Florida bar complaint currently pending against you. I know you can't really discuss it, but, you know, is it going to be the possibility that you get elected to the Senate and the Florida bar comes down and sanctions you as well? Should that be a consideration for voters?
So listen, when you're in public office and you're an attorney, you know, there's a lot of challenges. You can get a slew of Florida bar complaints, which I've been in office and I've received many, and none of them have ended up with anything. And, you know, as time goes on, we'll see how that works out. We're obviously very confident on that. But, you know, I'm laser focused on both my campaign, my service, and moving forward. All of this predates me being in the State House. All of this predates me running back in 2018 and having to address all of this. This may be the first time I've had to address it since, because the voters have put the trust back in me already. I've been representing District 113 now for 4 years, and I'm going to continue to serve as long as the voters are going to have me. And, you know, that's kind of where we are at this point.
All right, let's talk about some of the issues that you would face, both you faced in the House and you would face in the Senate. You know, you're running against Ileana Garcia, a Republican. This is a new district for her. It's a new district being drawn. Why do you believe you're a better candidate than Ileana Garcia?
So there's a huge distinction between the two of us, whether it be on the issues that tend to get headlines, whether it be about a woman's right to have a control over her body, whether it be about whether or not we should be discussing race, whether or not folks in the LGBT community, whether or not they are permanent or temporary, all of those kind of hot button issues, we are on opposite sides on. But it's really about the way we operate. Forget the fact that she's a Republican and I'm a Democrat. Forget that for a second. And let's talk about, I have my door open for everybody. In fact, my first year in the state house, I took my door off the hinges to send a message that I didn't care what your political party was. I didn't care your race. I didn't care your background. I wanted you to come in. My opponent has locked her door. She has played hooky. She deletes her Twitter account. She doesn't return phone calls. She blocks phone numbers and only really returns the phone calls of her political party. And I have shown over the last 4 years that I represent everybody. I don't care what your background is. I want to hear from you because I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I want to listen. I don't want to just hear you. I want to listen. So it's really about focusing on kitchen table issues. It's about working with people on issues that actually impact their lives, whether it be to protect their rights, whether it be to make sure that they can put food on the table and pay their rent and pay their mortgage, the things that actually matter to people. Those are the things that I'm focused on. I'm not focused on punching down on people and taking people's rights away.
When we come back, we continue our interview with State Senate candidate Michael Grieco. Stay with us.